Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to have Lindsay Weirich back with us for another class. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So, for folks that may not know, and Lindsay has an AKA as well. So, you may recognize the AKA, which is the frugal crafter. So, you may say, oh, that's who it is. So, I always like to connect the AKA, otherwise known as, because sometimes you don't know the real person's name. You just know the, is it a moniker or I
Moniker,
think
I guess so.
moniker? Yeah. so we like to do that. But Lindsay, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a painter and a crafter living in Maine, enjoying our beautiful summer season, which is so short. Um, but I love to create every day, whether it's painting or crafting. I probably do a lot more watercolor and mixed media these days, but I also like to integrate that with card making. And I kind of go where the mood strikes me. Sometimes I'll see something like cute and interesting. I'm like, oh, that would make a cool card. Or I got some tea at Christmas time and I'm like, oh, that design of that tea box. I'm going to save that tea box and I'm going to cut it up and put it in a card. So little things like that will, spark some ideas. And for some reason, it takes me a lot longer to make a card than to make a painting, though. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's fun. Or I might sew something or crochet something. It just depends on what I feel like any day. But I'm basically just creating every day. I teach online classes. I have a lot of YouTube videos and blog posts with different projects. I think I have um, over 3,500 YouTube videos and over 4,000 blog posts with different projects. So there's always fun things to try. If you're stumped and you want to just randomly find a project, you're more than welcome to shop for free on my YouTube channel and my blog, or check out a class if you want to go a little deeper into a topic, a painting topic. Or on Altenew, we have some exciting things coming up there too. Yeah, anything else you want to know? I don't know.
And so how, because in your last class, so we had an amazing class with Lindsay already, and we worked a lot with watercolor and gouache in there, and it was fabulous. How did you become the frugal crafter? Because in that class, some of the products you pulled in, like an avocado bag, how did you become the frugal crafter and integrate so many different things into your artwork?
Well, it comes back to growing up in rural Maine, and I know you're from Maine as well. We didn't have, especially back then, there was no Amazon. There was no, you might have a catalog. There was one art supply store in a nearby city, but everything was very expensive. And my mother crafted. So we had a certain amount of base materials around, like some plastic beads and some yarn and felt and fabric scraps and things like that. But for the most part, we would recycle things. So I was a big Barbie doll player when I was a kid. And and I didn't have the dream house, but we had all these coffee tables, like end tables with different levels. And so I would turn that into my Barbie dream house, and I would take like the round containers that salt comes in, and I would cut out like a notch so I could turn that into a chair. And I would use scraps of fabric because my mother sewed, and I would make Barbie clothes. It was just being creative, and I would save broken toys and make sculptures, really ugly, awful sculptures with them that my parents, I'm sure, could not wait to throw away when I wasn't looking. But yeah, I just used what was available. And my mom used to buy different crafting books, and she would subscribe to, I think it was like a Better Homes and Gardens company book. It was called Christmas is Coming. And so every year there'd be a new book, and I would go through and I'd look at the crafts, and there would be projects with felt, like making puppets with felt and making different things like that. And like hair barrettes and stuff like that. And I always just loved making something from trash, making something from nothing, and creating value where there was nothing, because you can get a little too precious and worry about messing something up, or, oh, I'm going to ruin that expensive piece of paper. But if you've got a cereal box that you can work on the blank side of, you don't care if you mess that up because it's free. It was just going to go in the trash. And, or like if you find a piece of furniture on the side of the road, you bring it home, you can paint it and make it a whole new creation. But if you went and bought a piece of furniture, even if pieces of unfinished furniture, you'd feel a little precious about it. Like, well, this has got to be perfect if I'm going to paint on this, or you would just leave it the way it was because it's good enough. It's okay. I don't want to ruin it. So I like to buy things find things that are already ruined, basically, and try to bring a shine to them, make them new and different. And then you get to have things that are completely unique and not like anybody else's creation, which I think is one of the reasons why we all love to upcycle and alter and make things like that. And I was also lucky enough that I grew up across the cornfield from a lovely watercolorist, Pauline Turner, and my mother enrolled me in classes with her from the time I was 5 because I was always drawing all the time. So she took me under her wing to start drawing at 5, and she said that she never takes kids this young. Usually it's 7 and up for like drawing, and then like 9 and up for watercolor. But she took me in at 5. Mom brought over some work that I had done, and I also was not like an athletic kid. I didn't have really any interests outside of art. And so that worked out great. And I was able to start watercoloring at 7, and watercolor's always been my first love. And I've kind of like bucked it at times, thinking like, oh, that's too prissy. I want to do something else. I want to do sculpture. I want to do acrylic painting. I want to do oils, anything but watercolor. That's too boring. And then I came back to it because, I mean, it was instilled so young, and it's like learning your first language and then trying to speak other languages, but you always come back to your native tongue, basically. Anyway, I don't know if I answered your question or I went completely off.
No, you answered it beautifully. I mean, that is, and I mean, that's what I used to tell people is when I started scrapbooking almost 30 years ago, there was nothing. There was big box stores that had kits. That's what you could get. We didn't have art stores and scrapbook stores here. We just didn't have that, we were very limited in what we had. Everything was online. You couldn't like touch a supply. It was, you had to order it, or you had to get a magazine, and then you'd go on and order it from liking it from there. So I think it's almost better for creativity. I didn't like it in the period when I couldn't get the things, but thinking of it, and as you were speaking about it, that really increases your creativity. Like you said, you find that piece of furniture and you give it the story. You don't get the story of the furniture, you give it the story. So, I mean, that's great for your creativity. That was an awesome description. So yes, that was fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah, I think sometimes we get overwhelmed with all the stuff. And I know for myself, and I tend to be kind of a little bit of an extreme person, but if I'm feeling I'm overwhelmed with all my options, I'll just like, okay, that's it. Nothing new is coming in. I'm not buying anything. I'm not shopping. I'm not browsing. I'm not looking. And I am going to just buckle down and just grab something off the shelf and use that. And I'll set myself like either a time frame where no more looking at art supplies until either this like a month has gone by, or no more looking at art supplies until I've made 10 cards. Or it used to be I would have to make 10 scrapbook layouts before I would buy another scrapbook supply, just to kind of force myself to use what I have. And then I always felt a lot better about myself when I did that, because I didn't feel so much like a consumer. I felt more like a creative or a maker rather than just a consumer that was collecting supplies, because that can happen to all of us so easily now with all of the options, all the beautiful things at our fingertips. And that's one of the reasons I love Altenew. You offer refills for the watercolor brush pens. You offer refills for the markers, for the alcohol markers. And you don't have to, you're not encouraged just to buy. You're encouraged to use, and then refill the thing you used up. And I like that. I think that's a much better way to go about it. And it's going to keep people crafting and making art longer, because you don't feel like you're buying a bunch of stuff that you never touch again. So I like that.
And we have Aram, who's one of our design team members. She said she's learned from Lindsay to use what you have, like credit cards for adding texture, using sponges for cherry blossoms.
Oh, I don't know how you can keep track of the chat and talk.
It's I can multitask pretty well, so it's all right. It's okay. But and that's the other great thing I think as well, is I do love having those refills, because I don't want to have to buy a whole new thing just because it ran out of ink. I just want the ink. So that's the great thing. We do have all those refills, which is absolutely amazing and wonderful. And of course, Lindsay will show you lots and lots of ways to not only use the water brush markers in this class, but the refills, and lots of ideas for those. Now, you said you like cards, you struggled, but so in the last class, I saw you make like so many cards so quick. Do you mass produce like a bunch of bits and bobs, like backgrounds and ephemera? Do you make a bunch of it and then put them together? Or is it when you're making one card at a time that it kind of takes you longer?
One card at a time, it definitely takes a long time. I usually will batch, like I'll show you this. Uh, this is special. Not everyone gets to see this.
Yay!
Luckily, I organized it fairly shortly. But like I keep, like this was a plastic piece that came on a upholstery sampling book that I tore apart to make some little purses out of. And then I have like I've got paint swatches and test strips and brush testing strips and burlap. I have all sorts of just, well, I guess you probably call it junk, but like I bought some horrible watercolor postcards and the quality was so bad. So I've just been like trying to use them up. And so like there's a bunch of texture paste samples in there and I'll, might use it for something at
They're
one point, but
gorgeous.
I keep them all in this bin. And then when I feel like I want to make cards today, I'll grab this bin, I'll grab a set of stamps, and then just I have a good variety of things, but I'm not overwhelmed. Like I need to go find that perfect paper. It's like, no, you've got enough in here. Let's use this up. I call them my artsy fartsy cards because we're pulling all these different swatches and all this basically stuff that any normal person would just throw away. But I just hang on to it because I'm like, that's a pretty color. I can't throw away the pretty color. I could die cut a heart out of that or something.
Yes.
And yeah, and then I'll just sit down and I'm like, this is what I'm using. So that way I'm not running around trying to find the perfect this or the perfect that. I'm like grabbing, this is the stamps that I'm using. This is the pile of stuff I'm using. I'll grab a stack of card bases I've already made, and then I'll just get to town because that way I swear I will spend 3 hours on one card or I can spend 4 hours on 50 cards, it just is much more efficient. And then you've got all these cards that you can like give away or send out or whatever.
Because the last class, you had smoke coming off you. Like your cards, you were like going, going, going. And you had such beautiful ephemera that you made. And just I don't want to be a spoiler for anybody, but in the last class, she pulled out the fun scissors, the decorative scissors. You guys remember the decorative scissors? Let me know in the chat if you guys remember the decorative scissors. Because Lindsay pulled those out and I was like, oh man, I remember those. That's all we had. We didn't have dies. We just had those scissors. So it was great to see those make a reappearance again.
And it's so much easier to put a fancy edge on something with decorative scissors than with a die, because with a die, you've got to get the die machine out. You've got to have it on something that's going to fit in your die cutting machine. And with the scissors, you can just edge whatever you want really quick. And while it might not be as quote unquote perfect, who's going to notice? Who's going to notice that the end of your like scallop was half cut off? I mean, some people will. I wouldn't. I would just be like, cool, I got a card in the mail with a pretty scalloped edge on it. I wouldn't be like,
Yes.
oh, that's not perfect, And I think a lot of times we get a little in our heads because we have so much inspiration at our fingertips. And it's not just like we're seeing a magazine once a month with these beautiful, gorgeous cards. And we've got that little bit of a barrier of like, okay, this is the most pristine way this could be photographed and lit. And obviously this person's taken hours on it and maybe done a few throwaway ones before this. So, but we kind of know that's kind of fantasy when we saw the card in the magazine. But now we see on social media, because I only follow art accounts on Instagram and I love seeing paintings and cards. But we can kind of see that and like, okay, well, that's a regular person, she's posting on Instagram. I post on Instagram. Why do hers look so perfect and mine look, well, that person's probably working all day on that card, but I think sometimes we don't make that connection that that's not that's a professional making a card. It's not a hobbyist just having fun on a Saturday afternoon. And I think we kind of have a little detachment there. When we saw the magazines, we knew that's a professional. They had to compete against 100 other card makers to get that card in there.
Yes.
So we don't feel like that we need to measure ourselves up to that. But when it's on social media and we get to know people because we're like you and I were talking and people are watching and we chat with people in the comments and whatnot, and we follow other crafters, we get to know them. So it's like, well, they're just making this at their home and posting it. I should be able to do that too. Well, you're a different person, first of all, so it should come out differently because you're different. But also, if that person is working in the industry and spending 40 hours a week honing their craft and creating and throwing away a bunch or not showing the bad pancakes of the stack of cards, or just showing the best of the best, it's not really fair. If you're working a 40-hour-a-week job and you're creating on a couple of hours on the weekend, to compare yourself to somebody that's doing it full time, it's not the best thing, I don't think. So I show warts and all. I want you to see the bad pancakes. I want you to see the messes. And then like I was doing some layered stamping, and layered stamping is probably the technique I struggle with the most, because I'm always getting it off a little bit. It doesn't really bother me though. But
Yeah,
then I have some techniques that you're not even gonna see where I messed up
yeah,
just by adding one extra little thing to it. Because I think that especially now with the fancy stamp platforms, which I know that Altenew has this fancy stamp
yeah.
platform. I'm a acrylic block girl, you know. I don't have room for that. I'm like, by the time I'm done crafting, I'm working in like a 4 inch by 4 inch square on my desk. I cannot pull out a big platform. So we're just gonna stamp it and hope for the best. And usually it's not the best, it's a little off, but that's fine.
Yep,
And I think there's a lot of people out there like me that are like, I don't have room for that, or I'd rather spend my money on another stamp set than a stamp platform. And,
yep,
you know, I think there's room for everyone. There's room for, and if everyone should make cards the way they want to make them. If they want absolute crisp, pristine image and they want to use a stamp platform, or they have maybe they shake a little bit and using the stamp platform is going to make it so they can stamp and
yep.
have results that they want. Anyone should use whatever supply they want to, but they shouldn't feel like they're less than because they can't afford or they don't want to have that bigger supply in their craft room.
And I still take out my acrylic blocks because it's a skill I don't want to lose. I want to be able to stamp and line up stamps and stamp straight. And it's one of those things like fussy cutting. You have to practice to keep
Mhm,
that skill up. And so I'm glad you mentioned the acrylic blocks because I still have a herd of them and I use them frequently, especially for smaller stamps. It's so
mhm.
much faster to me to pull out a block, stamp it within 10 seconds than to line it up with tweezers and all of that. So yeah, I love that you mentioned that. Absolutely. I think how many we did have a lot of decorative scissors. One lady even has Mickey Mouse decorative scissors that she's still
Oh,
using. So
wow.
that's exciting. But how many of you still are using blocks? I'd like to know, are you guys using blocks as well out there? So and that's and the thing is, my theory and what I try to tell people is do your card until you're proud of it. That's
Mhm,
it. That's all you need to be. That's it. Nobody else has to be proud of it. Just you. And when you're happy, that's good. You can stop. You're happy. And that's because so many people do get caught up. And I think unfortunately, especially newer crafters will go out and they'll look and they'll say, "Oh my, I'm never going to be as good as this person." This person may have gone to art school and
mhm,
they've done this for 20 years. And that's what, so you don't want to compare your day one to somebody else's day 10,000, and and unfortunately, social media can kind of do that sometimes. So I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that's especially for newer crafters, it's overwhelming to see the perfection, especially in videos. A lot of times in videos, you just see the finished, you don't see what's been cut out of
mhm,
videos. I try to leave mine in and be like, this is how I would fix it because
mhm.
I make a lot of mistakes. So I like to share my mistakes and how to fix it. So I love that you said that. And that's great and so encouraging for lots of the beginner crafters. Uh, oh, Wandering Dreamer said she's quite the opposite. The stamping platform has saved my stamping. It's the basis of getting a nice image. Everything else I can wing. I love it. You're winging it. We love winging it here. But we have a lot of folks that use blocks. They use blocks in a platform. They use blocks more than a platform. A lot of blocks are still, oh, Candace said only as a paperweight.
I still have a whole shelf full of like a wall of wood mounted stamps and I will not get rid of them. I
Yes.
especially the big backgrounds, I'm pulling those down all the time. And something else that I would encourage people to embrace is keeping those favorites
Yeah.
in circulation and mixing and matching, mixing because like back in the day, I mean, I've been stamping for so long that I remember I love collage style stamping, and I would love seeing these scenes that were built, and there would probably be 10 different stamp companies represented in a scene because they liked that moon stamp and they liked that fence stamp and they like this and that. And then what happens as you make your collection of the things that really speak to you and the stamps you really love, you're going to end up with a style that's all your own without even meaning to. And I think that's something to really embrace rather than trying to copy exactly what you're seeing somebody else make.
Yes.
Say, okay, I have a butterfly stamp already, or I don't have an owl, but that's a really cute owl. I think I'll pick that up. But if you already have an owl, maybe you use the owl that you have and you use the technique and add to your collection when you see something unique that isn't just making something else redundant. Because I think there's a lot of, and I think this kind of burns stampers out when they're trying to chase the trends,
Yes.
and they're buying that brand new set of butterflies when they already have a set of butterflies. And I think the thing to ask yourself is like, is this going to just make what I already have redundant? Is this better than the butterflies I have? Maybe it's so much better and you love it so much more. Then get the new butterflies. Maybe pass the old butterflies that you're not going to use anymore because you got this new one you like more. Maybe give that to a beginner or donate it to a thrift store, because who doesn't love to find a bag of rubber stamps at a thrift store? That is a thrill. um,
It never
and make
happens
sure
here,
that
but
you're,
yes, it is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, make sure you're curating a collection that speaks to you. There's some stamps you can't get anymore that I have in my collection that are, they're so dear, and I love pulling them off the shelf and using them because, and I kind of feel bad if I use them online just because somebody can't get them. But people can always find something similar, or they can
Yeah.
find some vintage clip art to print out and get a similar idea, especially if they're willing to cut some post-it notes and mask. I have this rubber stamp of an Etch-a-Sketch, and so you
Oh,
can stamp in
cool.
the window. And of course, you can't find that stamp anymore. I think I bought it secondhand at a somebody's yard sale, but they could print out a picture of an Etch-a-Sketch and then like use post-it notes to cover the outside and stamp in it, and still get that same vibe on their project. So yeah, the stamps are meant to be used thousands of times. There's no reason to get rid of them just because a company retires them. And that's another thing I like about Altenew. I don't feel like you're constantly retiring stuff,
Yeah.
because I think that's so frustrating, especially for people that want to be on trend. They're buying something, oh, this is the brand new thing, I can't wait to use it, and they use it and they go to share it, and then it's discontinued. And I think it's very frustrating for people, especially if they're trying to share it online so that they can maybe get on a design team or something like that,
Yeah.
and then their stuff gets discontinued. But good style never goes out of style. Good style is classic, and as long as you choose things that you like, not that's just trendy, then you're going to be classic. You're never going to be trendy, but you're always going to be stylish. And I think that's kind of just like with your clothing. It's kind of what you want to aim for, I think, with your artwork as well.
I love that. I love that. There's always, as I call them, Lindsayisms that come out of Lindsay's class that they stay with me. And it was the last time you said it quite a few times, and I was so glad you did, about using your supplies. If you don't use them, they're going to be sold at the yard sale for 5 cents. So use your
Mhm.
supplies, because and that I remember the 24 pin watercolor set. It said artist on it. And I'm like, no, I can't use that. And when I did, I loved it. I love it. Now you can't pry it out of my hands. But I love that you said that, because I think we do get intimidated by our supplies sometimes. We don't want to ruin them.
Mhm.
And we're not. We're just, you have to open them, you have to use them, you have to create beautiful things. So I love the Lindsayisms that come with class that kind of stick with you. I love that. And it's true. It is true. And the wood stamps, I still have some I keep up in my office because they're just so inspiring and so beautiful. I mean, they
Mhm.
really were works of art back with the wood stamps. Like, we didn't think about it at the time, but now looking at them, they really are works of art in a little block. And it's so pretty.
Yeah, they are, and the only ones I've ever unmounted are ones that were difficult to use,
Yeah.
being on their blocks. Like, I had a set that was like they were little, like, ribbon trims, and they were very hard to line up, so I did unmount those and put them on cling film. But, I've actually taken sentiments, like, unmounted sentiments, and mounted them on Jenga blocks because it's just more convenient for me to have them on my shelf, and I'm like, "Oh, I need a thank you. I'm just gonna grab that one. I'm not gonna go through my binders and find the perfect thank you. I need a thank you now." So I'm gonna grab that right off the shelf and go. And speaking about not wanting to use your watercolors because you're afraid of, like, ruining them or wasting them or whatnot, a pan of watercolor takes so long to use up. It lasts longer than a tube, I swear, because it's so concentrated.
Yeah.
So if you used up that set of 24 watercolors, you've got some mad skills under your belt, and you will not mind rebuying that, to get those colors again. So you're only benefiting yourself by aiming to use it up.
So open all those supplies. And I think that was like the best message. Uh, it's like you only love to build an art wall. Oh, I don't know what that means, Keisha.
Maybe that means like,
Did I miss
maybe
did
they
I miss
mean
the connected comment?
maybe they mean like you're collecting supplies and you're stacking them up on the
Oh, on
shelves
the
and you
wall.
built
Oh,
wall
okay, there
art
we go. I was
supplies.
like, um,
Maybe that's what they mean.
but no, and that's
I don't know,
interesting. So this, I mean, it really, and your conversation earlier talking about, just having all the things and creating with them. I mean, that must have fueled your passion for mixed media, getting you into, how did you get into mixed media? Was it when you were younger or were you older when you get into it?
Well, I mean, I think I've always been into mixed media. When I was younger and we did watercolor, it was very common to have a set of nice colored pencils. At the time, Prismacolor was pretty much the only professional colored pencils that you could get. And so my art teacher told my mother that I needed to have a set of Prismacolors. So I was using Prismacolors as a 5-year-old, and it's kind of hard to use Crayola after that.
Yes.
So we would take Prismacolors to do details on our watercolors or add veining to flowers, and add those details in. And that's something I've always loved doing. And my mother was a toll painter, did decorative painting, and she also did the Aunt Lydia's ballpoint pen. I don't know if you remember, there were these tubes of paint and they had like a ballpoint on it, and people would do tea towels and dishcloths and stuff. She had the Aunt Lydia's ballpoint pen things. She always had really interesting craft supplies that she would let me use sometimes. And I always just loved to see, well, what can and I ruined so many brushes. I always had a set of brushes because my mother would be like, I'd use hers and then she'd be like, these are yours now. Because I remember she had these beautiful toll painting brushes. And I was always looking for a way to save a buck, even as a kid. And my parents have a hardware store, and they had a bunch of wooden birdhouses that came in, and I thought they were $5. I'm like, I bet I could paint on those and sell them for 10. And so I took home some birdhouses, and I found some like bad mixed paint. Like when people would have some paint mixed and it wouldn't be right, they would just sit there behind the paint counter and be sold for cheap. So I take home the bad mixed paint, and it's probably about 10. And I would use mom's toll painting brushes, and I would paint like flowers and birds and all sorts of different things on there that I would like learn from her toll painting magazines in acrylic paints. And I would bring them down, sell for $10. So I make a $5 profit on every birdhouse. And but those poor brushes, I would leave them sitting in the water. The paint would chip off of them. They would have like latex paint dried in the ferrules. It was bad. But yeah, because with watercolor, you didn't really have to worry about brush care so much. Just, rinse them off and lay them to dry. And they'd have the plastic, like the Aquarel resin handles, so they didn't swell up and whatnot. So I did have to learn some brush care tips along the way. But yeah, I forgot the question. I have to be honest, Bridget.
That's okay. How you get into mixed media. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and I think that with mixed media, and this is something that I get to in the class a lot, because I know that everyone joining me for that class, we're all coming from different backgrounds. We have different stashes of supplies. Some people may be absolute brand new babies to art, and this is like their first time picking up a brush, a watercolor brush, or a palette knife or paste and things like that. So I want to meet them where they're at. But also I know that a lot of our friends they've got watercolors, and they've got gouache, and they've got acrylic paints, and they've got pastels, and they've got watercolor crayons or watercolor pencils or colored pencils. And when you add a new supply, and when you get the kit, you're going to have some new supplies in there that maybe you've never used before. You don't just have what's in that box. You have that box multiplied by every other supply you have in your stash already. And I never want somebody to feel like, well, I can only use these products in this box that are from Altenew with this, but I have a Winsor Newton set of watercolors over there, or I have a Schmincke set of pastels. Can I use that? Yes, absolutely. Because you take supply one and you multiply it by supply two, and then you get a whole new arrangement. And it's like, if you ever seen the advertisements that would come out from the ASPCA, where they would show a cat and they would say, if you don't fix this cat within a year, and they have like that tree of like how many cats, one cat, how many kittens one cat can have over the course of the year. Well, that's kind of like your art supplies. So you take that one art supply from the kit and you mix it with what you already have, and then you've got kittens everywhere of art supplies for you to create with. So it's if you're not careful, it can get overwhelming, but
Yes.
if you collect slowly and intentionally, then you will create such a rich, robust arsenal of art materials at your disposal. And that's really what I want to convey in this class, and what I hope people will take from it and be inspired by, so that when that last lesson goes by, they're not scratching their head like, well, now what do I do with this box of stuff? They're like, oh, because I'm going to mix it with that, or I'm going to use it with that, or I'm going to use it on my next project. And they'll probably have used up their pens by close to the end. Hopefully they'll go get some refills so they
Yes.
can fill them up, because you're not going to wear out those brushes. Those bristles are nice. You're going to be able to refill them probably 5 or 10 times before you even start to show any wear and tear on those brushes. And that's, that's what I want people to do. I want them to, there's no feeling like using up a supply. You think you're going to feel bad when you use up a supply, but you feel like, that's great. I didn't waste that money. That's what
Yeah.
it feels like when you use it up. It's like, I didn't waste that money. So now I can spend the $6 and buy the refill. And now I've got like 20 pens worth of ink here. And um, that's what I want you to feel. It's a really empowered feeling when you use something up and you can see what you've made and how you've grown, because you don't use up a supply and stay stagnant. You
Yeah.
use up that supply and you've made leaps and bounds in your skill level.
Yeah.
And you don't make leaps and bounds in your skill level unless you start using up some supplies.
And, just they're pretty, but just looking at them, when you
Mhm.
use them, you get
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
projects to look at,
Yep.
Anthony said, before I found Lindsay, I was constantly purchasing new stamps as soon as I saw someone using it. Now I see if it's something I like, I use the stamps I have. So, and Katie said, what an enterprising kid for your birdhouses. And TT loves the kittens of art supplies. And Nancy says, I've been using up my supplies this year instead of buying more. It's amazing what you can do with what you already have. And I think
Mhm.
that's a great thing about these classes is that, yes, there's a kit. There's an amazing kit that's fabulous and works great with this class. But the great thing is that you're also learning techniques from Lindsay. So the technique can apply to anything. It
Mhm.
really can. So it's really, you're just putting more things in your wheelhouse the techniques that you know. So she's showing you samples with a beautiful kit that Lindsay built this kit. So this kit, if you guys are like drooling over it, Lindsay built this kit herself. So she chose everything. Do you have reasons for why you chose what you chose in the kit?
Absolutely. I didn't want anything to be a one-trick pony. I didn't want anything to be like a fast fashion thing, like you're going to use it for this season, but then you're going to, chuck it out. I wanted things that were going to be versatile, that were going to be able to, that were going to be able to be useful to a variety of people's aesthetics. So I tend to go really bold colors, bright colors, a little modern, but I wanted things that could also be done, it could look a lot more organic and natural and dainty. And so with like say the layering flowers, that one you can use a silhouette and you can do some really quick, beautiful graphic cards with just that bottom layer of that stamp. But if you are like some of these stampers just blow my mind. They are so precise. They stamp everything just perfectly every single time. You have that aspect. You can do that. The stamp set was designed, and this is if you get one of Altenew's stamp set, if you're new to Altenew, if you're watching this on my channel, maybe you haven't tried it. They include a guide in their stamp set, so you know how to use it. If you're not someone that can look at a stamp set and go like, I know what I'm going to do with that. If you kind of scratch your head a bit, they have a guide and it kind of suggests some ink colors you might want to try and some techniques you might want to try. And so the layering stamp set was recommended that you do like a neutral color and then you stamp over a couple of brighter colors to keep it kind of simple. I love to multi-ink and get a few colors on there and then layer up. But sometimes I'm like, I just don't have the bandwidth for that. So I wanted things that like you can just ink that up with a solid color and emboss it and call it a day. You can ink it up with embossing powder and then do a resist, excuse me, and, excuse me, and call it a day. Or you can do the more fancy layering. And I like that you can you can get a more bold graphic modern look, or you can get a more vintage layered, kind of almost like a chintz fabric look with the feathers. The feathers are beautiful, but you can very easily go with a really splashy, bold, modern look, or you can layer them up in neutral colors, like more natural from nature colors, and get like a more organic look. Like say you want to do a Father's Day card, or you want to do a more botanical looking, I guess feathers wouldn't be botanical, but you want something a little bit more classic looking, you can do that. But if you want to do like a wild dream catcher or something, you could do really bright colors and get a whole new look from it. So versatility. For the media, I wanted versatility. You really can't go wrong with a white texture paste because you can use it as is. You can mix it with any of your acrylic paints, your watercolor brush markers. You can tint it to whatever you want. If maybe you've never made cards before and you're like, I kind of want to try making cards, and you make the cards and then you're like, okay, I've made some cards. I've made 500 cards with this kit. because seriously, once you get going, you'll make a lot of cards. But you're like, I know 10 people. Who am I going to sell these cards to? I need to take a break on making the cards. You take the texture paste, you mix it with your acrylic paints. You can use it as a modeling paste on your paintings. You can use the watercolor brush pens in your watercolor art, your sketchbooking work. So even if you want to take a fling and try something new, you still can use all these things again. And the stamps are classic enough that if you decide like, well, you run out of these cards in 20 years because you finally met 500 people that you could send them to, the stamps are still going to work, and they're classic enough designs. The florals are very much like what you would see on like your grandma's curtains. They're that
Mm.
very kind of like layered, almost like a screen print, like a layered fabric design. And because it's not trendy now, it's not going to be out of trend in 20 years when you need to make another card. And so that's basically why I chose those products. And maybe you're like, maybe you're a painter and you use up the ink in the watercolor brush pens. Well, then you got water brushes. Even if you don't want to buy the refills and refill them, you can wash them out and put water in them and use them for your travel painting. And it's just versatile. The palette knives, they will work with whatever medium you want to paint with if you decide that card making is not for you. I never want to dump product on people that will just only work for a specific project and then it goes away. That's not what I'm about. And I'm very glad that Altenew is down with that, because I know a lot of companies would be like, no, we want to pump the next thing that we want the latest greatest. We want to keep pumping out that stuff. But I want to be associated with companies that want to invest in quality products and keep supporting those products, and not just discontinue the pens because they don't sell as well as they used to. I like that they offer the refills so you can keep your investment going. And the thing that will burn me on a company will be if a company decides that they're going to like stop selling refills, or they're going to stop supporting the things that people have spent good money investing in. Because
Yeah.
investing in a media, like to go in on markers or to go in on something like that, is expensive,
It is.
and it doesn't feel good when you can no longer refill your product and you have to start from scratch from another company.
And then you're scared to use your supply again because you're like, "Oh my gosh, I only have so much left," and, "Oh my god,"
Yeah.
you know? And, so people were asking about the kits. The kits are on the website. Keisha, the link is down below if you're on YouTube, but Keisha will pop that link in there right to Lindsay's class. You can go look at the pictures. There's 2 choices. There's a deluxe kit and a regular kit, and you can see there's beautiful stencils, that Lindsay chose as well that are gorgeous. I've gotten to see some sneak peeks, and this class is every time my jaw drops, every time she sends in something, I can't wait for you guys to see. As always, I can't wait for you guys to see this class. And we also have, talking about the watercolor brush markers, we have 3 more sets. So of course, we don't want to put them all in there because of course we want to keep the price good for you guys. But if you guys love the watercolor brush markers, there's 3 more sets that all have refills as well. So you can expand your collection if you wanted to as well. And we also have empty markers so you can create your own colors if you would like to as well. So lots of options. And you probably will, because I'm serious, when Lindsay does a live, there is smoke coming off her with cards. Do you remember how many you made last time? It was so many.
Yeah, I had quite a stack when we were done. I don't know how many we made. We were going to town with those cards. That was fun.
That
We
was,
got a lot done
yeah.
in an hour.
So what you guys have coming in the live, because you get 6 days of recorded lessons with Lindsay that come on to the Altenew Academy, and you can watch them at your leisure. You don't have to watch them at a specific time. You can stop them, you can pause them, anything like that. You're good to go. I believe we've fixed it now so you can adjust the speed as well. That was a request that we had gotten in previous classes. So I believe you can adjust the speed of the videos as well in Altenew Academy now. And then on the last day of class, you get to craft live with Lindsay, which is always my favorite as a crafter, is getting to craft with the teacher, because you can come and you can ask questions. If you have questions for Lindsay, maybe there was a lesson that you were like, I really loved this, but I struggled with this. And you can also, there's a Facebook group, which Lindsay will be in there. She is super active in the Facebook group. So if you're working on something and you just don't get it, just pop in and Lindsay will answer you and say, oh, maybe try this. So, because we had that last time, like we were talking about like what brushes were good and everything. So you really, get access to Lindsay as well with this. You get to ask her lots of questions about mixed media, about the class, which is awesome. So you get to learn so much. You basically get to pick Lindsay's brain for a week. So that's pretty cool. And the live session's just fun because we have you guys come and join and you can pop questions. We do have everybody muted so that everybody can hear Lindsay's amazing instruction, but you get to pop questions in the chat and we pose them to Lindsay and she'll answer them for you. So you can bring any questions that you may have, again, about the lessons, about that day. If Lindsay likes avocados, just any questions
You.
that you may have. So what would you tell somebody that maybe is new to mixed media about this class and they're like, I don't know, I've never tried it before? What would you say to encourage somebody that was never has done mixed media before?
I would say that mixed media does not have to be messy and scary. Mixed media is basically you're mixing two different medias together. It could be something as simple as watercolor and colored pencil, or gouache and colored pencil, or watercolor and gouache. You've probably done mixed media in your life and just never called it that. So I would say don't be intimidated, and make it work for you. If you don't like techniques where we're spraying ink and creating like a lot of mess and getting our hands all stained, you could skip that one out. You could maybe just try it on a small area and see if you like that. You could wear gloves. My tip though is I don't bother with gloves. I don't like to create a bunch of plastic trash. So when I'm doing a really inky technique, my hands will be completely stained. But when I wash the dishes or I wash my hair, the ink with the stains will come off your hands. So it's a little incentive that after you're done crafting, wash your dishes, and then you can think about your crafting as you're doing that, chore, and then your hands are nice and clean when you're done. I probably wouldn't invest in a manicure before you take this class. Maybe wait till after your class, but yeah, it's nothing to be afraid of. And what I actually did, I have a big table that I work on when I'm doing kind of messier crafts. And I went to the Dollar Tree and I bought it's a clear plastic tablecloth cover. And what it's meant for is like say you have a tablecloth and you're just fed up with having to wash it all the time because people spill stuff on it. It's meant to go over a table.
Yeah.
And you can put that right over your kitchen table if that's where you have to work. And what I do is I take not a magic marker, a permanent marker, and I write the word top on each, because I have a rectangle table. I write top on each corner so that I know what side I'm getting the gross on. And then when I'm done, I'll just fold it all up and I just stick it in a drawer and I use it over and over again. And it can get ink on it, it can get paint on it, it can get stained. And I just know what side's top, because the products that we're using, like the watercolor markers, if you have splatters of that, if you put that upside down on your table, it could transfer onto your table. So as long as you know what side is top, then you can just keep using it over and over and over again until you tore a hole in it or something. But I mean, it should last pretty well for you. And that way you're not, you don't have to worry about things seeping through and ruining anything. So really there's nothing to get used to worry about. And even if you don't like the really messy techniques, those brush pens, they have a fine tip, and you can use them for coloring fine stamped images.
Yep.
One of the things that I like to recommend to people, that if they're new to watercolor and they don't feel comfortable drawing, and maybe they don't want to invest in a bunch of stamps right away, maybe they're new to card making, is to get the watercolor coloring books that Altenew sells,
Yes.
because they're on the nice paper. They're not on the cheesy. Sometimes you buy a watercolor coloring book and the paper is like cardstock. It's not really designed for watercolor, but the watercolor coloring books from Altenew are on watercolor paper. And that way, yeah, you can see if you like it before you invest in stamps, before you invest in other papers. And I brought that with me. I went on a trip to Old Orchard with the girls when they were graduating high school, a bunch of their friends. And I brought that with me in a couple sets of watercolor. And you could tell when, teenagers stay up all night and they're having a good time, they're partying, but then they get a little burnt out and they just need to calm down and be like, here, have a coloring sheet and have some watercolors. And they would just chill and they'd paint for a while. And then they'd be ready to go hit the beach again and go have fun with their friends. But that's a really great way to get started. And if you're like, oh, this wild mixed media, messy, it's not for me, get one of those little coloring books and just color in the shapes with those pens. Get a water brush or just a cup of water and a paint on a regular brush. Add the color to the shadow area. Drag it out with the clean water. It's a great way to use them that is absolutely clean enough to do on your sofa if you want to while you're watching TV at night. So
That's
I don't
yep.
think there's a way to waste your money with this kit as long as you're willing
Yep.
to try everything that's in it.
Yep.
And the stamps will last. The stencils will last. There's a lot you can do with those beyond messy mixed media techniques.
And I really love, I mean, a lot of what we have at Altenew is kind of timeless. The florals are timeless, but I really love, and that's what I would describe with this kit that you put together, is everything in it is kind of timeless. Like it's not something that's going to go out of style. It's just the botanicals and the silhouettes are stunning. The feathers are gorgeous. I mean, it just everything in there. And then love the stonewall stencil. Like that was my
Yes.
first passion when with the stencils was that one. And it's just amazing what you can do with them. And I'll let a little cat, since we have cats today, we'll let a cat out of the bag. Lindsay shows you how to use a 6x6 stencil on a full sheet of paper. So she gives you so many tips and tricks in this class that are beyond what's kind of in the lesson, like beyond what she's creating. She has so many tips and tricks in this. So I hope you guys will check this out if you haven't had a class with Lindsay with us before. We do have another class with Lindsay that is amazing with watercolor and gouache, and oh my gosh, the projects in there were just so stunning and gorgeous. And a little, I mean, that was mixed media too. Like you said, I didn't think of that. I would never think of that. But yes, when I put colored pencil on watercolor, that's mixed media. You always, or I always equate mixed media with dirty hands. Like that's what I, messy. I think mixed media, messy. But I love that you said that because it doesn't have to be. And there are so many crafters that that's kind of one of those things where they're like, I'm not getting messy. I mean, I know some folks that won't use embossing powder because it's messy, right? And so I love that you mentioned that because I think a lot of us think of that mixed media messy, and it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, not at all. And the more I think you adopt that mixed media mindset, the more you're going to see the versatility in your products. Like for instance, there's also metallic watercolors. So if you took the brush pens and say you were coloring one of the flowers from the coloring book or something, maybe you were doing a Christmas card and you're coloring a Santa with the watercolor markers, you can mix the ink from the watercolor markers with the metallic watercolors and you could give Santa a shimmery velvet robe. You can give the sky a shimmery effect by just mixing the metallic watercolors with your watercolor brush pens. So once you kind of open your mind to that, there are some things that aren't going to work together. I honestly think your mistakes are the best gifts because that teaches you what, if I say, don't mix oil paint with your watercolor, you could take me for my word, but if you try mixing oil paint with your watercolor, you go, ooh, that didn't work very well. But you're going to remember that a lot better. So everything you try, you may not get the outcome that you're going for, but you might get a better outcome, or you might learn a different thing your supplies will do, or you might learn that, well, that doesn't work for me, and you'll remember it because you've actually put it into play. But once you start approaching everything with that mixed media mindset, you're going to find your supplies are so much more versatile, and you can almost feel little sparks in your brain happening. And we can get kind of stuck in our hobby and not venture out, especially if we have a very limited amount of time to like make a card or to do something. And we might just kind of stick with a tried and true because we want good results now. But once you start kind of following those little rabbit trails into, oh, I wonder what happened if I, use this on this card or that on that card. You may have some ones that you don't like very much, but you'll start to feel that like kind of like it's almost like an itch getting scratched in your brain, or almost like a little burst of sparkle in your brain when something hits and something works. And you'll be washing the dishes because you got to wash your ink off your hands, and you'll think of something else that you want to do. And you'll start finding that you either are always keeping the notes pad open in your phone, or you're keeping a notepad in your pocket to write these ideas down, because you're going to be seeing the world in a new way once you start embracing mixed media. I feel like I'm overselling it, but I think when you start combining your supplies, you can't help but think, well, what would this work? Or you'll see a pretty tag on a shirt you just bought. I'm like, oh, I could trace that on my card. I cut that out, and then I can, you're going to think of different things that you can use stuff for. You might even see, a coffee spill on your counter and be like, can I dye my paper with that? Yes, you can. And it will smell nice, for your next coffee themed cards. It's not acid free though, but don't use it in your scrapbook. But, for experimenting, heck yeah.
And but I do love your push for doing dishes too. So it's also like a public service announcement to do your dishes. So I love it. I don't know. I like my dishwasher a lot. So I don't know about that. I may soak my hands, but now
My our
what's
dishwasher broke. Our dishwasher broke, like, a couple of years ago. It
yeah,
was right before the kids started college, and it was, like, right after the Christmas of my daughter's senior year, and, I'm really fed up with appliances breaking, so I make myself go a month to decide if I really need to
need it.
replace it, and now we use the dishwasher to dry Tupperware, basically. We wash all the dishes by hand. If the kids were all still home, I might, replace the dishwasher, but,
Change it.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
a nice meditation. I find, like, washing the dishes, it gives myself a time just to not have to think about anything. I just look out the window, at any deer that might be walking by or whatever, and I just wash the dishes, and I think. And that's where a lot of the good ideas come. They come when, like, you're taking a shower, or you're washing the
Yes.
dishes, or you're driving, these times when you can't, actually do something, and I think your brain needs a little bit of that rest and that downtime where we're not being overstimulated
Yeah.
to think up these creative ideas. Creativity does not thrive in a super overstimulated environment. You got
No.
to give yourself time. You deserve to take a little time to think, to fart around with your materials and see what they will do, where you're not putting the pressure on yourself that you must perform, you must produce. You need to have that time just to play. And that's another thing that I think this class will give people. Like, there's a class I recorded where one of the lessons that I recorded where I had so much footage. I was like, how am I gonna edit this down to something that's watchable? And we were doing a bunch of the stamping. And there was a lot of different techniques. And I'm like, how would I do this actually? What if I just distill it down to the basic techniques so they could actually watch it when they're doing their dishes
Yep.
and think about it while they're doing the dishes, then go to the craft room, because when you're actually doing all these different the stamping technique, the stamping techniques, it was lesson 3. Once you're actually doing it, you're probably going to end up spending a lot of time just making lots of focal points, lots of backgrounds, experimenting, playing, practicing. So kind of being able to it's kind of like you're downloading the information to your brain, and then you can go and play with it. And then you can always replay clips when you're like, oh, how'd you do that again? Oh, okay, this is what I do next. Rather than having an hour and a half of footage to watch through. I thought that would make a little more sense, because you need time to digest this, and you need time to actually just put the stamp to paper, put the pen to paper, and see what happens, because watching it is not the same as doing it. And you got to give yourself that time. Don't feel rushed. You deserve some time just to play with your supplies. You worked hard to afford those supplies.
Yep.
So give yourself the time to play with them and learn what they'll do.
And I mean, I think that's great too that you mentioned this. So I hadn't mentioned this yet. This class, when you buy this kit, you own this class. It doesn't go anywhere. So you could in 15 years watch Lindsay's class again. So say you're like, I haven't done mixed media in 15 years. I want to go back and I want to watch Lindsay's class. You can. It's there. It's not going anywhere. And I also love this class kind of almost gives you that permission, not that you need it, but gives you that permission to just experiment and go wild and try things and see, because that's the thing. If you don't try it, you don't know what you like. You really
Mhm.
don't. And I think that is one of the best things that I love about Lindsay's classes is that you feel so freeing. You feel like when you teach and you're showing the projects, it's your class is like there's no limits. We're just going to have fun and we're going to use color. And that's it. Like those are the parameters I feel from your class is we're going to have fun and we're going to use color. And then everything else is on the table. Just have fun with it. And I love your classes are so freeing to me. That's how I find them. So if anybody took the watercolor class, do you guys feel the same way with Lindsay's classes? Do they feel freeing to you? Because that it just you give us the space to experiment and find what we like, and it's just a safe, crafty space and downtime for folks. Hopefully, this class will be some downtime for you to really tap into your creative genius and just let it go and share your amazingness. Because remember, there's only one you. You are the
Mhm.
only one that can create your beautiful projects. So please always, and please share them because everybody, we can only see your project from you. So that's the exciting thing. Um, Nancy said, I like to try any craft at least once, then I can say I tried it. And if I and don't like it, or I want to make more of this. That's great, Nancy. I love
Mhm.
that. And she also said she likes to watch the videos first, then try the technique. And that's great too. Just kind of sink it in, let it
Mhm.
get in, and then go in and be ready to go. And like I said, you can pause it, you can go back as many times as you'd like. There's beautiful PDFs with all of Lindsay's beautiful photos and step-by-step instructions for you. So we really try to give everything we can. So anything else? What's the reason they should take this class besides being with the amazing Lindsay Weirich? What is another reason they should take this class, Lindsay?
Well, I think that probably the thing I would like people to take away from it and the value that I would like people to get from it is that I see a lot of people, they kind of, they start off, they love art and they get away from it. Either they have a lot of things going on in their job or their personal life and they can't find the time, or they feel like it's a big ordeal to get their stuff out. Or sometimes, honestly, I think a lot of times, especially women in modern society, we get kind of diminished and our needs don't feel as important as everybody else's needs, especially if you're kind of sandwiched between raising children and taking care of parents or spouses. And you can kind of feel like, well, that's selfish. I shouldn't go make art. I shouldn't go craft because my husband needs me, my kids need me, my parents need me. I'm just being selfish if I do this for myself. But if you can take that time to just get out of that logical brain, get into the right side of your brain, it's like a mini vacation. And I also think that a lot of times we collect supplies and then we feel ashamed that we've collected so much and we're not using them, probably because we're so busy with all these other obligations in our life. And we might even get out of a hobby for a while and then we jump back in and we realize that it doesn't speak to us anymore. They don't like the projects that are coming out. And there's something called frequency bias where we like what we're used to. So if you step away for a while and you come back and you're seeing all this stamping that looks so different than what you like to do, you may think, well, this isn't for me anymore. But yes, it's for you. You don't need to make cards like anybody else. You don't need to recreate what is hot and trendy right now. Sit down with your supplies and create what you want to create. I even see it in the art world. There will be trends of what is selling. And, oh, you're using watercolors. Well, that's not in style anymore. We can't sell, galleries would be like, we can't sell watercolors. We can't sell oil paintings. We can't sell realism. It has to be abstract. We can't sell this. It has to be that. Well, what about all the people that's what they're passionate about making?
Yeah.
You need to make what's passionate, what you're passionate about. And if a contained box of supplies that you can set on the table, set on the shelf next to your kitchen table, and you can pull out after everyone's gone to bed and give yourself half an hour, even if it's the coloring book is such a great idea. I should have included a coloring book in there. That's such a great idea just because it added on to your shopping cart.
In the
It's not
next class, we'll have the coloring book. No.
it's not very expensive. Honestly, it's not very expensive. Or if you have a
Yep.
bunch of stamps, stamp outline stamps and just have them in an envelope ready to go. Give yourself half an hour at the end of the day. Uh, Maybe while you're watching your favorite TV, or maybe instead of watching your favorite TV show, just give yourself a chance to unlock that creative side of your brain, turn off the worrying side of your brain that's worried about, your friends, your family, your bank account. Turn off that part of your brain and just create. And if you're not even and this goes for everyone. I don't want anyone to feel pressured to buy this class. Don't
Yes.
feel pressured to buy this class.
Yep.
I want you to create in however you want to create. Go in, maybe make yourself a little kit. You see what's in my kit, you're like, well, I can't afford that right now. Well, you go in your craft room and you see
Yep.
what you have, and you get yourself a box or a basket and you put those supplies in there. Maybe you stamp a few images so you have something ready to go, and you set that on the table next, or on the shelf next to your kitchen table. And the next time life is just getting a little too lifey and you need a little break, you put on your favorite music, you put on your favorite episode of Friends or whatever it is, and you just sit and you color. And why do we stop coloring as adults? We need to color more than the kids do sometimes.
Yes.
And you just make some art. Just let the worries fall away for half an hour. They'll
Yeah.
be waiting for you. The dishes in the sink, they'll be there when you're done, when you're with your inky hands. They'll be there waiting for you. They're not going anywhere. The laundry's not going anywhere. Give yourself that little bit of time and just enjoy those supplies you've collected, enjoy those supplies that you've bought. Um, you should use them, not the people that are going to pay 5 cents in a
Yes.
yard sale after you're dead and gone. You use them now while you can still enjoy them. And that's what I want people to get, whether they take the class or not. I want everyone to create. It's good for you.
I love all my Lindsay-isms. I love them. I love that we get Lindsay-isms, and they stick with they really do, they stick with me, like, every
Aw.
now when I take that out, I smile every time because 'cause I'm like, "Nope, not the yard sale." Like, I'm
Yep,
gonna
yep.
skate with it. So, and the coloring books she's mentioning, we do have them at Altenew if you're interested in them, and they are on the cold pressed paper. I don't know if you can see the texture on there? And they're just you get a black image and you get a gray image. So if you want to have no line, you can do no line, or if you need the lines still, you can have the lines. But it's on beautiful cold press paper, and they are. I'm like Lindsay, I will throw that in a bag and I go and I did like I had to buy another book. I did like 5 like one day because they're just so easy. Just you don't even think, you just color. So yeah,
It
those are great.
it it's the gateway drug of watercolor, I think. Like, if you got one of those coloring books and a little set of brush pens for a friend you gave to, they would be coming back for watercolor. That's a great introduction because it's gonna come out great. You don't have to worry about drawing, and you don't have
Yep.
to buy a bunch of stamps and ink pads. You've got everything right there in such a compact little format.
Yep.
It's a great way to get started, and if you don't like it, if you're like, "I don't think I like watercolors, I think I'm more of an oil paint person or a gouache person,"
Yep.
you're only out a coloring book and a couple markers. You haven't invested that much money, so
And you can
it's a
use
great
gouache on here
goal.
because it's the cold press paper.
Yeah.
It would take some gouache too. The water
Mhm.
brush pens, I mean, the watercolor tubes, you can really if you have ink pads and you don't have watercolors, use the ink pads. Our ink pads you can watercolor with. So lots of things. We don't have any portrait coloring books, but that's an excellent
Yeah.
suggestion. Thank you. Keisha popped the link in there. I will pass that suggestion up. You never know what's coming out. So that's a great suggestion. And we did have a question. So this class will be 6 pre-recorded. And again, you watch those at your leisure. They release at midnight on each day of the class. So starting August 25th, that will release. And then we have one live with Lindsay, which is so exciting. It's about an hour. We went, I think, an hour and a half last time because I mean, there was smoke coming off Lindsay. She had so many projects and so many cards and so many ideas. It was so much fun, as always, as it is to have a chat and to craft with Lindsay. It's always so much fun. So that's what the class is. And if you want to take a peek at the class kits, they're on the website. You can look at them. You can see everything that's in there. You can see it talks about the 6 pre-recorded classes. So it talks about everything that you get in the class. And of course, if you have questions, just reach out to us at support at Altenew. We're always happy to come and answer any questions. Oh, Marilyn said I would do a Lindsay portrait watercolor class in a heartbeat. Okay, good to know. That's something we'll have to put in the brain there and hold on to. We'll keep that suggestion. Thank you so much. I know we want anything Lindsay, right? We want to do anything with Lindsay. So very fun. We got mixed media and watercolor, and you never know what's coming next. So always want to do more. Thank you, Lindsay, so much for joining us today to have a chat. It's always so much fun, and we always get a Lindsayism, which I love. So
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been cool to. I peeked over the chat a few times. It's neat how it merged both of our channels together.
yes, yes, we have,
Technology.
and we're so excited all of you joined us in the chat. And thank you so much for all that contributed to the chat and added to the conversation today, especially about the decorative scissors, like flashbacks of fabulous craft supplies from days. And yes, we do have an early bird promotion going on right now. So you save money, which at Altenew we love to, as much as we can, give out the savings so that you can do the classes. And especially with the Frugal Crafter, we like to make sure that everything fits into a good budget, is a good price and a good value, and very versatile for you. So, and again, Lindsay built this kit herself, and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous kit. So both kits, actually. So make sure to check out those kits. And we hope to see you there. We hope to see you in class in August. It sounds like it's a long time away, but it'll be here before we know it. So thank you so much to all of our participants, and Lindsay and Keisha behind the badge. And from all of us at Altenew, thank you so much for allowing us to help you craft your life. We'll see you all very, very soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.